I'm not sure how people are so confident with making videos and talking to somebody that does not talk back, but also somebody that sees you. It's strange because I talk to Willow, my companion, all of the time, but it's stranger and more awkward when I'm standing in front of a camera and holding my phone against the window with my hand whilst talking, because I can't find any of the angles that I like. I've come home from a long day of running errands, and I suppose the mind does more creative work when it's tired, so this is a good time to talk about an encounter I had today. There was a couple walking towards me as I was entering a bookshop today, and I thought that I recognised the smile of the girl as she walked past me, and I noticed the natural curl of her hair, and it took me back to a girl I knew when I was in high school. And I began wondering since then whether it was really her and whether she recognised me. And I was thinking that it would be strange if she did recognise who I was after I've changed in appearance so much. And I began wondering if she would have wanted to say hi, and if I should have said hi. And I got a second chance when I was walking out of the bookshop, and they were ahead of me along the alleyway I was walking down. And that was quite interesting, and I thought, maybe this is my opportunity to say hello, but in the end I didn't. And I suppose recognition of somebody is a more important matter than we realise sometimes. And there are things that we take for granted because they seem to be such a small part of our world. And I've been reading a textbook recently for university that was talking about this in a way that referred to closure as something we need as human beings, but it's also something that we've constructed as a way of understanding and establishing control over the world around us. And I think that my purpose for talking about this today is, ever since that I saw a video by a nice gentleman on here, I don't remember his name, and I don't remember watching all of the video, but he made a video titled, "Is there anybody out there like me?" I think that was the name. I will share it with you when I upload this, but seeing that inspired me to make a video of my own. And I think that I've been wondering for a long time about the concept of soulmates, and I've been thinking about when a soulmate meets their other soulmate for the first time. Because they say that soulmates recognize one another when they meet, and other times perhaps they recognize one another after their parting. But it poses the question, do soulmates meet before they enter this world? And that ties back to religion, because if you believe that all of the souls were created at once and are sent to earth individually at various times, then you could argue that the souls that hang out in the soul world feel a sense of companionship here as well. And that's my personal belief. And it really struck me in the book I'm currently reading, which is a childhood favourite of mine. It's called A Little Princess by Burnett. And there's a quote that I had to write down because it summarised my thoughts and articulated them in such a way that I couldn't word it better myself. And I'm going to read it out to you now. It says, "How it is that animals understand things I do not know, but it is certain that they do understand. Perhaps there is a language which is not made of words, and everything in the world understands it. Perhaps there is a soul hidden in everything, and it can always speak, without even making a sound, to another soul. But whatsoever was the reason, the rat knew from that moment that he was safe, even though he was a rat. This is a scene where the main character, Sarah, is sitting in an attic on her own, and she encounters a rat for the first time, which she begins to speak with and become friends with. But it was communicated without words. A lot was said in the unsaid when they first met. And I think this goes for a lot of human and animal companionships, because personally speaking, with me and my rabbit, of course not a word was exchanged between us because we didn't speak the same language, or did we? Because I think that the sort of dynamic we shared and the sentiments we expressed towards one another and the company we shared was something that didn't require words. And of course, speaking is one device used to communicate. And there's also writing and there's singing, but I wonder if there are other devices that we haven't tapped into, or that we don't actively use, or that we don't know we're using. And I think that it's in these strange ways that we recognize people we've never met, because we see something in them that has been stored in our heads, and it might be something we see in ourselves that we see reflected in them. Which must be why we sometimes avoid saying hello to some people, and we feel inclined to introduce ourselves to others, because perhaps we see something we don't like in someone and we feel drawn away from them, but in somebody else we see something that we want to be, or that we are, or that we're proud of, and we want to introduce more of that into our lives. So in that sense, I'm wondering if anybody would recognise me in the way I recognise other people. I think that I am far too cautious to introduce myself to strangers I see, but there has often been a time where I feel that a person that is walking past me is particularly captivating, or somebody that I like to contemplate about their experiences and their backstory when I'm sitting on the train moving away from them at the station. And I think that it would be nice if one of these chance encounters that seem fleeting and meaningless turns into the companionship of a lifetime. And it happened to me because when my rabbit was first brought home, he was rescued from the side of a road from a cage that somebody left him and his siblings in. And this person who rescued him worked for my dad, and he asked him he did work for my dad, and he asked if we wanted to take one, and we were very hesitant at first because we'd never had rabbits before, and we took two because they're supposed to live in pairs, but we did not know much about bonding at all, and we ended up giving one of them back because they were fighting, of course. They were two male rabbits. And I stand here now looking out at the spot where my rabbit is buried in my garden, and I realise that fate has a strange way of twisting lives together, and it's something that we simply have to accept. We can try to influence it, but what is meant to reach us will find us, even if it's between two mountains, and what is not meant to find us will not be ours, even if it's between our lips, as a saying goes from my upbringing. And I think that wouldn't it be so ironic if the internet, which has been a place that I spend so much of my time, that I've grown up with, ends up becoming the vessel for me to find company in the existence of somebody that feels like all of those pieces coming together. Because I think people tend to, going back to my textbook actually, people like to tell stories, and a story can be anything. It can be made up or based on reality, or it could purely just be reality. And I think human beings have a necessity to tell stories, because without them our legacy is lost and we don't make sense of what's happening around us. And I think that stories, whilst they are socially constructed because they aren't necessarily objective observations, they are narrated by people but from their own perspectives. And the narrator can choose when to start and when to put the ending. And I think it's very important to consider where, I think it's an art to know where to place an ending, or just to experiment and settle an ending somewhere or another, because life will continue. It will continue before the beginning that you choose, and it will continue after the ending you choose. But a story is, let's say there's a story about a couple who get married and the story ends at their wedding. That would be a happy ending. But then if it ends at a marine accident in which one of them passes away, that would be a sad ending. But then if it's discovered that there was a secret government plot to overthrow this particular vessel, then it would be a thriller, a conspiracy type story. So I think we have a power to influence what our story is and where it leads and who matters. And I think we like closure because we like having compartments that mark the beginnings and ends of certain things. And some of those things are easy to recognize and some of them aren't. But I hope that my rabbit wasn't the last time I recognized somebody's soul in this world. Although I do not believe that my rabbit is particularly replaceable or imitable, but I am not denying that there is a possibility that my soul will communicate to another soul in a way that I don't recognize, in a way that I don't understand. But it would be nice to experience that recognition again. And it would be nice if all of us could experience that sort of recognition at least once in our lives. And it has been a privilege to be able to live, in particular with my soulmate, for nearly 2 years. And he was my rabbit, and his name was Cloud.